What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel, where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Make sure you put the bell notification on all so you can be notified the very second that we drop new content on this channel. So let's talk about it. Right now we're going to get into one of the best fights on the card last night. It was headlined by Conor Benn versus Samuel Vargas, but one of the most, if not the most talked about fight on the card was a fight between two women pros, which was Ebanie Bridges from Australia and Shannon Courtenay from over here in the UK, from Watford. So yeah, going into this fight, there was a bit of needle between these two girls. They had a face-to-face before. There's been a lot of discussion over the past few months. You know, Bridges has been sort of calling out Courtenay and calling out different girls and stuff. She was meant to fight Rachel Ball for the world title. That didn't happen. Ball had COVID and stuff like that. So, you know, she was in contention for sort of a world title shot. And Shannon Courtenay, she was coming off of a knockout victory going into this fight. She had previously lost to Rachel Ball, who was, you know, world champion that before. So yeah, there's a lot of needle, a lot of contrasting styles. Ebanie Bridges is a girl who, you know, she markets herself, shows off her body and stuff, shows off the curves, and she's aware of herself, aware of sort of good looks and everything. So she really sells herself, she's sexual and stuff, and she's really flaunts it. And there was a lot of needle before this. Shannon Courtenay was saying, I'm a real boxer, I'm not, you know, it's not about lingerie, it's not about what you do, and, you know, you're just flaunting yourself, blah, blah, blah. And there was that contrast, because Ebanie Bridges was like, well, you know, people tune in to watch this stuff. What I do gets eyes on the sport, and it's good for boxing ultimately, because it brings eyes on the sport. So definitely two girls with contrasting personalities, contrasting ideas of what boxing's all about. And yeah, going into this fight, they did have that genuine dislike for one another. You could see that in the face-off show that took place, Adam Smith hosting it. So yeah, as we got into this fight, Courtenay, you know, started off the fight very well, good jab, and, you know, Bridges also really came into her own early on in the fight as well. I think Bridges took a few. It was quite even in the first couple of rounds. Bridges definitely seemed to be the stronger fighter in the opening round. She was coming forward, moving ahead quite well, but she did get caught quite a lot. But Bridges was just literally just storming forward all the way through. Shannon Courtenay was sort of backing away. But again, Courtenay was still engaging her. You know, as Courtenay backed away, she's still engaging. Both girls threw lots of combinations throughout this fight, and for me personally, watching it, it was nip and tuck. It was one of those where, you know, Courtenay was doing the sort of better boxing on the back foot, but at the same time, Bridges was coming forward, and you know, as slick as Courtenay was, she was still getting caught quite a lot, you know, during this fight. So it was, for me, it was kind of nip and tuck, especially through the first half. You could sort of split it either way, you know, through the sort of first 5 rounds, and it was very entertaining to watch all the way through. I mean, you know, Courtenay was, you know, she's got the skills to sort of move around, and she's got that Adam Booth style, but in this fight, she, you know, she did use her skills, but she did engage quite a lot. You know, I think this is one of those fights where it was really good to watch, because it was pretty much a war from the word go. You know, from that first bell, both girls just sort of went for it. Courtenay used a little bit more finesse than Bridges did, but overall, they both went for it. You know, even backing away, Courtenay would get caught and then try and fire back straight away. So it was really a war of attrition all the way through. You know, Bridges, she seemed to be willing to sort of take one to give one, and that style sort of worked for her through a lot of the rounds. You know, she would take shots on the way in, but then she'd give her own back harder, and it pretty much was nip and tuck, I'd say, especially through the first, I'd say through the sort of first, from round 1 all the way up until round sort of, let's say around round 7. I think that's where there became a bit of a separation. But prior to sort of round 7, 8, going forward, the championship rounds, it was very nip and tuck. It was very even. There were like cuts on both girls. There was cuts on the head. I think of Shannon Courtenay, and almost the same sort of cut on Ebanie Bridges. And something that changed the game in this fight was the eye injury, sort of the eye of Bridges. I'm not sure what round it was. I think it was around sort of round 8 where she got this horrible swelling on her eye. She got a real they call it a mouse, big bulge. And I think from about round 8 or 9 she couldn't really see properly, so she was sort of fighting with one eye, still giving it back to Courtenay. But in those championship rounds, sort of 8, 9, 10, for me, that's when Courtenay sort of took over, because she was doing, although yes, she was fighting fire with fire, she was the girl who had that bit more finesse, and she was the girl who was sort of able to make Courtenay miss and make just a few little adaptations in the fight, sort of a good bit of movement and head movement, and she sort of that lateral movement that she does, and she was able to sort of make Bridges miss in those championship rounds and really make her pay. And both girls hurt each other, but it became Courtenay who was doing the hurting in those sort of championship rounds. And that for me is what sort of won of the fight. Those final sort of 3-4 rounds, that's where Courtenay really took over and really began to stamp her authority on the fight, because Bridges, she was good. She came forward. She's got a good chin. She can really take a shot. But she was just, in the end, she was just taking too many, and she needed to do something to change. She needed to stop taking so many on her way in, but she didn't seem to have. She basically seemed to run out of ideas in the championship rounds, because it was just coming forward and it was just one paced attack from her, and you could see that Courtenay could just read what was going on. She could just see what Bridges was coming with, and she was just landing. She was just, those championship rounds, it was relatively close, but Courtenay was sort of lighting her up and always having a better of the exchanges, whereas Bridges was just at that one pace, just constantly coming forward, but she was getting less and less effective as those championship rounds wore on. And for me, that's what won Courtenay the fight. She won this by unanimous decision, but it was very entertaining to watch. Good advert for women's boxing, I think, overall. And I would say the only sort of injustice in there was the judges' scorecards. I think 2 of them only gave Ebanie Bridges about 2-3 rounds. They only gave her about a few rounds, like 2 or 3 rounds or something, and I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, I think Courtenay won it by a few rounds, but the 2 of those judges' scorecards were just out of order, just way too wide in favor of Courtenay. I mean, they got the right winner, which is the most important thing, but I think, yeah, those ones were sort of too wide. But anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Good ad for women's boxing. There is a bit of a question mark over it, though, because ultimately these 2 girls were ranked number 8 and number 9 in the WBA. So it is a bit of a mystery as to why it was those 2 contesting for the belt and not maybe rank number 1 and rank number 2, or rank number 1 and number 3, or whatever. So it was a weird, that is another weird thing about it. That's the only thing that I felt was a bit dodgy about it, is that they're not the top girls even in that organization. So it is a bit of a weird one that it was number 8 and number 9 in the WBA rankings who fought for the title. So yeah, that's the only thing where it's a bit of a stain on it. But nonetheless, as a fight, as a spectacle, it was very good. It was enjoyable. It's got replay value to it. And all the best to Shannon Courtenay going forward. And of course, Ebanie Bridges, a true warrior. One day maybe we could see a rematch, or we'll see. We'll see what happens with these girls. But hats off to Bridges, hats off to Courtenay. great advertisement for women's boxing and a very enjoyable fight to watch. So until next time, those are my thoughts. This is MKO Pugilism, over and out. Catch you on the next one.